Have you ever felt a heaviness in your heart, an irresistible burden, a clear direction to pray for something or someone, but didn't know what to do with that feeling? That is exactly the crucial point that Watchman Nee addresses in today's video. If you are seeking depth and clarity to understand how your prayer can actively cooperate with God and bring results in His work, this video is fundamental. Don't miss this opportunity to transform your prayer ministry. Subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell. By doing so, you ensure that you will immediately receive more content like this, focused on taking your spiritual life to the next level. Let's dive into the topic. Every child of God must have a burden to pray for something specific. No child of God can say they have never received one. However, we can only receive it when our spirit is open to Him. The condition we need to receive this burden is a spirit open to God. Once we have received this burden, we must faithfully carry it out through prayer. After having fulfilled this specific burden, we will receive a second one, and then a third, and so on. Therefore, the most important thing is to have a spirit open to God. We must tell Him, "I open my being before you to pray." Because of our unfaithfulness, we rarely receive this feeling. If we want to cooperate with God, we must remain sensitive and not reject any feeling that comes from Him. If we feel that we should pray for something, we must do it immediately. In the beginning, the desire to pray is not very intense, but it will gain strength as we proceed. If we quench the Spirit and do not give freedom to this feeling through prayer, it will fade away, and we can only recover it by confessing our sin and faithfully obeying, from that instant onward, every feeling that God places in us. We must pray as soon as we are led to do so. If we faithfully respond to the feeling we have, God will continue to give us specific burdens in prayer. The only reason why we do not receive a specific burden is that we have not fulfilled the previous one, and because we have not done so, we remain imprisoned under its weight. If we carry out the first burden to pray, we will receive another. Perhaps in the beginning this feeling is almost imperceptible, but we must obey it. If we are faithful to the Lord in this, God will continue to put in us the desire to pray for something specific. Brothers and sisters, if we desire to be useful to God, we must recover that feeling to pray that we have lost. This burden to pray for something specific is directly related to the Lord's work. Therefore, we must seek to do God's will in everything and wait for Him to communicate to us the desire He has in His work. This desire to pray for something specific manifests the will of God. The feeling we receive is the means by which God manifests His will, and it is also the will of God itself. For example, God may put in you the definite feeling to preach the gospel. If you obey and act according to God's will, the more you preach, the more you satisfy that feeling. Perhaps you feel a burden at first, but the more you preach, the lighter it will become for you. However, if you do not discharge that burden, it will imprison your spirit, and you will feel that it increases over time. Eventually, you will become insensitive and will no longer perceive anything. The inner life will begin to fade. You will feel as if there were a barrier between you and God, which does not mean you lose your eternal salvation, nor that you are condemned. It simply means you will feel as if your life has stopped moving, as if you could no longer have contact with the Lord, and as if the weight had imprisoned you. Spiritual work in its entirety comes from a feeling. If someone tries to work without having a definite feeling, the work they do will not have any result. But if they work according to the feeling they receive, their entire being will be freer as they proceed. Perhaps you initially feel a burden, but as you pray, the burden is relieved and you feel satisfied. The value of your work depends on the feeling you have received in relation to it. Without this definite feeling, your work will not have any spiritual value. Every time you act according to a definite feeling, you will feel comforted and will be edified. As you present your prayer, you are edified. Without this specific burden in prayer, you will feel that you are working in vain and will even feel disapproval as you proceed. In all spiritual work, you must first wait until you receive a burden from God and then purposefully set out to consciously discharge it. This does not imply that we constantly have to examine our inner being to discover if we have a feeling. Among the children of God, there is nothing more harmful than shutting oneself up. It is very dangerous to turn our gaze inward. This can be more serious than sin. Sin can be quickly recognized, but the same does not happen when we shut ourselves up. A disease that is not felt is always much more serious and harmful than an obvious ailment. If you were asked if it is right to be proud or envious, you would immediately answer no. These flaws are evident. But you can be shut up in yourself 20 times in a single day without feeling that you have done anything wrong. If you quarrel, you immediately realize that you have done something wrong and you can identify your problem. But you can shut yourself up in yourself without having the slightest idea how malicious that is. Looking inward greatly harms the Christian life. Many Christians remain shut up in themselves and lead a life of false spirituality. Before acting, they stop and ask, "Is this a burden that has been given to me? Is this feeling I have from God? Have I received this burden? What is the burden for which I have to pray?" If a man continually asks himself these questions, he does not know what the specific burden in prayer is. Suppose someone asks you to help them carry a table from one room to another. While you do it, do you happen to ask yourself if that is a burden? Would you say, perhaps, that it is not a burden because the table is very light, but that it would be if it were heavier? No. Whenever you feel the weight of something, that is a burden. Remember that a burden is something you know, not something you have to discover. If you have the desire to pray for something specific, you know it. It is wrong to look inside yourself to see if you have the feeling or not. The specific burden to pray is something you are aware of, not something you search for. It is of utmost importance to recognize this fact. No benefit is gained from reflection. The greatest damage a Christian can suffer comes from shutting oneself up, for this deceives them. It is not necessary to constantly seek this feeling. If you feel that you should preach the gospel to someone and you stop to ask yourself if you have received this burden, the opportunity will disappear. Brothers and sisters, it does not help us to rummage around inside ourselves. It is easy to realize if you have the burden to pray. You do not need to scrutinize trying to find this feeling. If you have to look within yourself to find a feeling, it is because you do not have one. It is not necessary to ask for anything. If you have that feeling inside you, you will immediately know it. If something weighs on you, that is a burden to pray. If an inner weight is felt, that is a specific burden to pray for. And if you respond to it, you will feel relieved. Then you will be free for God to give you another one, and you will be edified in the process. God's work is carried out in this way. The ministry of prayer is carried out in the same way. Prayer and work are inseparable. Without prayer, there can be no work. Therefore, one must learn to accept this burden and fulfill it through prayer. It may be that the Lord puts a certain matter in you and makes you feel the desire to pray. If you pray, the burden will be relieved and you will feel comforted. But if you do not do it, you will feel that the weight of that burden oppresses you. If you do not pray today, nor tomorrow, nor the day after, you will feel troubled every time you think about it. And this feeling will become increasingly heavier for not having done what you should. After setting it aside once or twice, you will eventually not feel it anymore. If on repeated occasions you act against your feeling, you will reach the point where you will not feel it. You will lose contact with God and will not be able to have fellowship with Him. A barrier will be erected between you and God for not having been faithful to the given burden and not having acted according to God's direction. All work must be led by a specific burden of prayer, whether the work is directed toward God or toward men. When you have a burden to pray, you must act according to it. If you do not, you will feel dead for having disregarded God's will. This feeling in prayer is a necessary requirement in the work of God. Once you have a specific burden in prayer, you will have to act according to it. Although it is possible that the feeling we have is from God and that our desire to pray is God's will, it can also be that our knowledge governs this feeling, mainly in its initial stage, although there are exceptions. For example, God may remind us of certain things and ask us to pray for them. It is possible that He wakes us up at midnight so that we get up to pray for a brother who lives in a distant place. These things are not very common, as God does not do this very often. Sometimes He has to look for another person from far away because He cannot find someone nearby. However, these are exceptions. Under normal conditions, God directs men according to what they know. This is why we say that knowledge governs the specific burden in prayer in its initial stage. After having the knowledge, one does not necessarily have this feeling. Perhaps we know the condition of everything related to certain brothers and sisters, and yet we do not have any feeling regarding them, nor do we feel moved within ourselves. Although we have the knowledge, we do not wish to pray for it. Therefore, the specific burden in prayer does not come primarily from knowledge. However, it governs our feeling in the beginning. For example, God may give someone the knowledge of certain matters and the desire to pray and help in the situation. This is how the burden is received. This feeling can be formed at the beginning through knowledge. In fact, most of said burden starts from knowledge. It is not common for God to initiate this feeling without having some type of knowledge about it. Nevertheless, there may be exceptions. Sometimes God may give someone the desire to pray for a certain brother who may be sick or in difficulty, and about whom one is not informed. However, God puts a definite feeling in their inner being to pray for him. Perhaps after a few weeks or months, they receive a letter from him, in which they learn that he was sick and in difficulty. There are cases like these, but they are not common. This can happen, but it is sporadic. As a rule, this feeling to pray starts from knowledge. However, this does not mean that knowledge alone is equivalent to a feeling. Since prayer is an important Christian ministry, a question arises. When there is an intense feeling to pray, should we express it in words, or should we keep silent? Can we simply bring our feelings silently before God? We believe that if God gives us a definite feeling, He wants us to express it with words. If we only have a few scattered words, we must use them. This definite feeling is expressed solely with words. If we remain silent before God, the desire to pray will not go away, but will become increasingly intense. The value of our words in the spiritual sphere is surprising. God takes into account not only what we believe, but also what we say. He pays attention not only to the intentions of our heart, but also to the words of our mouth. Our God said to the Canaanite woman, "For this saying, go, the demon has gone out of your daughter." Mark 7:29. The few words that the Canaanite woman pronounced made the Lord work. We may make a petition in our heart, but it has more effect if we express it with words. It seems as if God asks us to express what we have in our heart. The Lord's Prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane was crucial, and it was a prayer made with fervent cries. Hebrews 5:7. We do not mean that we should only make prayers aloud. Sometimes it is not necessary for us to pray audibly. But if we have a burden in our inner being, the weight we feel and the external expression must agree. If the feeling we have inside is not strong, prayers aloud are nothing more than noise. But if the feeling in our inner being weighs heavily, it must be expressed with audible sounds. If we cannot pray aloud in our home, then we must find a place where we can express our feeling, as the Lord did. Sometimes He would withdraw to a deserted place, Mark 1:35, and at other times He would go to a mountain, Luke 6:12. If we cannot go to the desert or the mountain, we must still pray audibly, even if it is in a low voice. The important thing is that our prayers are expressed verbally. If our feeling to pray is strong enough, we will find a suitable place to do it. God desires for us to articulate our feeling with words. If we do not do it, this feeling will remain in us. Some wrongly say that they pray silently, and that it does not matter much whether this specific burden in prayer is fulfilled or not. If a man has not finished the work he has in his hands, he cannot proceed to the next. In the same way, if our desire to pray is not relieved, God cannot give us another. We have to respond to our feeling with our words so that God can give us another feeling. Very often, our difficulty lies in the fact that, although we are aware of having a burden to pray for, we do not know how to present it when we kneel down. We know we have a weight within us, but we do not know what to say. We need to realize that our feeling is in the spirit, while the understanding of this feeling is in the mind. When our spirit touches our mind, we understand the feeling we have in the spirit. When our spirit and our mind come into contact, both gain clarity. Some people feel a burden, but they do not know what it is. This is because their spirit has not yet touched their mind. Therefore, when their spirit has a feeling, their mind does not understand it. How can contact be established between the spirit and the mind? In a very simple way. If you want to find something, what do you do to find it? If the object is in the west, how could you find it by going east to look for it? You would have to go around the world to find it. The object may be 1 kilometer away, but you would have had to walk around the earth to find it. You must take the point where you are as the center and start searching from there, gradually moving from the center to the circumference, expanding the circle as you go. In this way, you will cover all directions. This is the best way to search for things. When your spirit loses contact with the mind, you must do the same. When you kneel to pray, do not cling stubbornly to one thing. That would be walking in only one direction, and so you would not easily find what you are looking for. Pray for many things and in many directions. After uttering a few sentences, you may realize that is not the matter you should pray for. Then you must leave it and take another matter. Perhaps you have to change your focus 2, 3, or 4 times. Perhaps after the second matter, you gain clarity, or perhaps you have to mention 5 or 6 things before you feel that you have touched something that agrees with your feeling. But once you pray for this, your mind and your spirit will unite. You must then pray specifically for that matter in order to relieve your burden. Once you pray in this way, you will feel relieved. And when you have responded to your first feeling, you will be ready to receive another from God. Many Christians cannot be used by God in the ministry of prayer because they are overburdened. They have never carried out any specific burden in prayer. God gives them the burden to pray, and they may recognize it. And perhaps their mind and their spirit are even connected, and yet they do not pray. They let this feeling become increasingly heavy until they feel so oppressed by its weight that they can no longer bear it. Then the feeling to pray goes away. Brothers and sisters, the work of God is seriously hindered if we do not have a free spirit to serve as useful instruments. If we need someone to help us do a certain task, but we see them with their hands too full, it would be useless for us to seek their cooperation. In the same way, if we are overburdened, how can God entrust us with something else? This is why we must respond to that feeling. That will make us free, and God will be able to give us more. If we do not carry out this burden, we will not be able to carry out a ministry of prayer before the Lord. The ministry of prayer requires a free spirit. If we have a feeling in our spirit and do not pray for it, we will not be able to move on to pray for another. If we have the desire to pray but are not faithful in this, nor in taking on the ministry of prayer before the Lord, we will feel a heavy burden on the first day, heavier on the second, and even heavier on the third. After several days, the feeling will gradually fade, and so will the strength to pray. If we have this feeling and do not pray, in the long run, this will cost us our ministry of prayer. Therefore, we must dedicate time to fulfill our ministry of prayer. The best way to pray is to do it with 2 or more people. This will save us from individualism. Many have not learned to pray with others. When praying in company, we must not only pray, but also listen. If we learn to pray in this way, the spiral prayer we speak of, that is, the one that extends from the center to the circumference, will be effective. Through prayer, we can express the feeling that God has given us. Prayer frees our spirit and our being and allows God to continually entrust us with a new feeling. Today, God needs the cooperation of His church on earth and our cooperation through prayer. I hope we can fulfill His will. The central truth that Watchman Nee leaves us is that your prayer ministry depends on a free spirit. Every time you ignore a burden, you not only silence the spirit, but you become an unusable instrument in God's hands. The unalleviated weight becomes a barrier between you and the divine work. The cooperation that God needs begins with your faithfulness in discharging the first feeling. Think about it. Where have you failed to be faithful to the burden He has already given you? I want to know. From what part of the world are you hearing this reflection? Leave your city and state here in the comments. And now, if this video has helped you understand that the weight in your heart that you have been feeling is not anxiety, but rather a divine signal to pray, you have a mission. Send this video to that brother or sister who is feeling overwhelmed, who feels that their spiritual life has stopped moving, or to someone who is about to give up on a cause or a calling. They need this reflection on the importance of having a free spirit. If you value this type of deep content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. This helps us take this powerful message to many more people who, just like you, want to have a fruitful prayer ministry. God bless you, and until the next one.